Hey, how's it going? Today we're going to play some games with the Greninja Charizard deck that Drew Townsend and Kobe Kawasaki played to a Day 2 finish at Sacramento Regional. First, I'm going to go over the list and then we're going to get into some games, and after that I'm going to talk about my thoughts overall on the deck and if I think you should even bother ever playing this deck. Our main attacker here is Greninja EX, a stage 2 fighting Terra Pokemon that has an attack for 1 water that does 170 damage, and we get to take any one card we want from our deck. And then for water double colorless, we do 120 to 2 of our opponent's Pokemon. And of course, if we use the double turbo to power it up, even though we can discard it, it still only does 100 to 2 of our opponent's Pokemon. Charizard is our finish attacker. It's a broken card. I think everyone knows what that does. Pidgeot EX makes this entire deck come together. It just lets us get whatever card we want every turn out of our deck. And we're most often going to get it into play with the Grand Tree Stadium. So we have a Pidgeotto in here. This is the correct Pidgeotto. It also has free retreat, so that is the reason we play it. Grand Tree lets us grab stage 1 from our deck and evolve one of our basic Pokemon in play. And if we did that, we can also grab a stage 2 and evolve it. We can't target a stage 1 that's already in play with the stadium, and the Pokemon has to have been in play for a whole turn. The other stadium we have in this deck is mostly for Raging Bolt. Apparently in like turbo decks, we can Iono and put League Headquarters in play late in the game, and League Headquarters says basic Pokemon's attacks cost 1 colorless more, so that can definitely buy a turn. We have the Dusclops and Dusknoir that let us fix math. Dusknoir of course lets us knock it out and put 130 damage somewhere, and Dusclops does the same but only 50 damage. This combines well with both of Greninja's attacks and can lead to big prize turns. We're going to be trying to take like 3 or 4 prizes with Greninja and take the last 2 or 3 with Charizard and Briar. Briar says if our opponent is at 2 prize cards and our Terra Pokemon knocks out their active, we can take an extra prize. We also have Thorton in here, which has become a staple in stage 2 decks. It lets us swap out a basic Pokemon in play or a basic Pokemon in the discard pile, and it keeps the number of turns in play. So we often put Rotom in play turn 1 to draw cards. We can swap it out later in the game into like a Duskull and immediately candy into a Dusknoir. Definitely handy. This deck plays Energy Search over Vessel, one of the only times that Energy Search might be better because we only really ever want to grab 1 energy with it. We only have 2 waters and we never want to get fires with it unless we really need to retreat. And the hands can also be kind of awkward with this deck, so if like we have to Ultra Ball, we wouldn't have enough cards to also use a Vessel, so I'm guessing that's why Energy Search is in here. And the rest of the cards are just to make the deck function, so yeah, let's get into the games. Here we are up against Ancient Box. At this point, I guess it could be Guardy, but since I'm doing this in the future, I already know that it's Ancient Box. This hand is fine overall as long as I check my prizes real good, but I do grab Froakie and Pidgey here. It's pretty important in these situations to check the middle evolution and to see if the Grand Tree is here when we have access to a card like Colress that could hypothetically grab the stadium and an energy to get an attack off next turn. That's why I just attached to the Manaphy to guarantee a retreat next turn. But of course, the keen-eyed of you will have noticed that the Frogadier is prized. I didn't notice that at the time. I just mainly checked the Grand Tree. I could have looked at it, but I immediately forgot because my memory is the worst. Luckily, here my opponent is forced to Sada to the active to even draw a card. So we do kind of get a turn back. And I mistakenly play the Colress. I should just Arven here for either Nest Ball or Ultra Ball and Forest and grab the Rotom, and then Forest for like a Poffin to get another Froakie and maybe like a Charmander or a Duskull or whatever, something like that. But I do play the Colress not knowing what's in the deck, and yeah, just attach to the Froakie. And I saved the Grand Tree. I probably should have put it in play, but I think that next turn I can play it to evolve the Pidgeotto. I just assumed that it worked like that because why wouldn't it work like that? It's like an ace spec, it's supposed to be really strong. The card is like hardly strong the way it is. Like evolution straight from the deck on a stadium is really good, but I just don't see why they would put that limitation. So I assume that I can just like evolve into a Pidgeot. I think that's the first thing I go to do. Or maybe, yeah, I definitely do that first because I wouldn't want to draw the Pidgeot off the Fez. And yeah, I find out that I cannot do that, which is rather unfortunate. And now I'm all distraught here. I don't know. I'm trying to figure out if I just evolved into the Pidgeotto. I thought the card worked different than it does, I guess. I also didn't realize that the Pidgeotto has free retreat, so I was kind of confused why it was glowing like that at first. I don't know, my mind was all messed up this game. But I do use the Fez before the Arven because I want to hit Candy or Greninja, and I do hit the Greninja. So now I can grab the Rare Candy and the Rescue Board just to get it out of the deck, evolve to Greninja and use the attack, and probably grab a Pidgeot would probably be the way to go for next turn, just because Pidgeot can lead to any card, and then I can play the Iono if I want to. Yeah, the only unfortunate part is I'm not knocking out their Roaring Moon here because it does have the capsule on it. But the upside to that is I'm also not giving them Fezandipiti draw if they do have access to that. I'm not sure if they do, but they seem to not be drawing very well. So not knocking them out is kind of an upside here. And they do bench another Roaring Moon and attach the energy to it. And this is kind of like where I see like a plan to finally like get ahead in the game, because stumbling at first was kind of rough, but I can counter catcher the Roaring Moon, hit it for 170 and knock out both Roaring Moons in the same turn. I just have to get another Froakie down and attach an energy to it, because I have to expect here that they're going to knock out the active. It's not too much to ask for them to get those like 5 ancient cards in the discard pile and attach an energy. I guess with their hand being like so bad, I could think that they're not going to knock me out, but attaching the double turbo to the bench is always the safer play. That's just kind of what I'm trying to figure out here, what I think the odds are that they're going to be able to knock me out next turn. And I just think it's a little bit too risky to attach it to the active and just hope, because I have access to Grand Tree and Pidgeot next turn, so I can grab the water, and next turn if they don't knock out my active, I can attach the water to the bench, the Rescue Board to the active, like Grand Tree up into the Dusknoir and Iono, and hope to hit Rare Candy, Ultra Ball, or Greninja, and Pidgeot for the other piece, and then knock out 3 of their Pokemon in play, which is pretty good, I think, because the way that they're drawing, I might just be able to knock out all the Pokemon in play, or if they do get more Pokemon in play and like end up getting the knockout and stuff, just taking a 3 prize turn would be pretty good. We do top deck the Dusclops. These names mess me up so bad because they're also similar, which is kind of unfortunate. I would have rather have Grand Treed it out to thin the deck a little bit, but we're here now. I'd already top decked it, and I just Iono and do end up hitting the Rare Candy, so I can just Pidgeot for the Greninja, Dusclops knock out the benched Roaring Moon, and then Greninja Mirage Barrage knock out the active and the bench Fluttermane. Here I just always knock out the bench. It's just always best to not let them promote one of the whatever Pokemon they want. Even in this case, they really have no choice. They would just, it doesn't matter what they promote, but it would let them do more actions and just take a little more time, and they're already like stepped away from the computer or are just mad that they're losing the game. Maybe they disconnected, I'm not really too sure, but they do end up taking quite a while here to take the prize. And all I have to do is retreat and use the second attack to knock out both their Pokemon in play, which is, I don't know, pretty good. And I think it's a pretty solid plan in this matchup to play it like that and not ever give them access to Fezandipiti until I like him completely devastating their board. We are up against Raging Bolt this game, and I have a pretty good start. I can Nest Ball for Rotom, and then just like Forest for Buddy-Buddy Poffin and draw some cards. It always feels kind of bad putting Rotom down against like decks like Raging Bull and like Turbo Moon and stuff like that, but I think that's really all that I can do with this hand. It's kind of a rough matchup for the deck as is, so I figure I at least have to set up. I can grab the Charmander, and then next turn, if they don't like Bravery Charm their Bolt, I can evolve to Charizard and knock it out with the Defiance Band. Or I can try and counter catcher up an Ogerpon if they like are able to float an energy on an Ogerpon for the turn and then threaten to knock out the Charizard with that. That's kind of my plan right now. And yeah, we'll just see how it goes. They immediately bench an Ogerpon. I don't know, whenever I'm up against Raging Bull, I just kind of expect that they're going to get the turn 1 attack. My only real question is, are they going to like bring up the Rotom and knock that out too? That would make the game a little bit harder. But as you can see, we do have Briar, so I'm like trying to think of some kind of prize map that maybe Briar would let me win faster. And they do get the Bravery Charm, which is kind of unfortunate, but that's the way she goes. They flip heads on the catcher, and I expect them to bring up the Rotom here, but they do bring up the Pidgey. So I don't know. I think that that is kind of a mistake. Like, they might just be thinking a little too much into it when you're playing Raging Bolt, especially against a deck like, you can see that I'm going to have 3 other 2-prizers in play next turn. Yeah, you probably just want to knock out the first 2-prizer and then just go 2-2-2 before I can even like figure out any like tricks to play on him or whatever. But I do have Arven in this hand, so like this hand is actually kind of perfect. I can Arven for Candy, Energy Search for the water, and hit into this Raging Bolt for 170. And I don't know, I think I probably should put the Defiance Band on the Greninja. I don't think I end up doing that. I spin the Pokestop to try and hit Rare Candy or Counter Catcher, and I just mill the League Headquarters, which is like the main win condition in this matchup, is to Iono like late game and Headquarters and hope that they whiff an attack. I don't know, I looked through my deck and it looked like I had a ton of items in there, so I was like, oh yeah, I'm probably have pretty good odds to hit at least an item and not, like, there's one card that I really don't want to hit. And I did end up hitting it, so that's kind of unfortunate. I Ultra Balled for a Pidgey here. I think a Pidgey's fine. I kind of like brain farted a little bit there, and I think I meant to get a Duskull, but Pidgey will work out. Because right now my plan is to, later in the game, knock out this bull, as long as they don't switch card it, which is why I should have put a Defiance Band on this Greninja, so switch card wouldn't matter. But my plan is to later in the game Dusknoir the Raging Bolt, but before that, next turn I want to knock out the Ogre Pond with the energy left on it and Iono them, and then the turn after that I want to take a 4-prize turn with the Dusknoir and knocking out one of the other Ogre Ponds, or just if they bench another Raging Bolt or something like that. So that is kind of the plan. I guess I probably will need Pidgeot to make that happen, but I do need to get down Dusknoir sooner rather than later. And the flaw with this plan, of course, is if they are able to knock out my Charizard this turn, I can't ever use Dusknoir, so I'm just kind of in a really terrible spot. And I'm kind of committed to, if they get the knockout off of the Iono here, I basically just lose the game. So that is kind of the plan. I think if I planned a little better, no, I couldn't, never mind. I was gonna say, if I planned a little better, there might be some kind of Briar play here, but there's just not. That would only let me take 5 prizes, and that wouldn't really help. So I do the only thing that I feel like I can do, and evolve to Charizard and Iono. And I do get the Candy Pidgeot and a Duskull, so that's pretty lucky. Now I can just grab the Counter Catcher and bring up the Ogre Pond with the energy and hope that they whiff for a turn. The only like thing I didn't get here that I really would have loved to get would be a Stadium. Even Grand Tree is fine, but ideally here it would be, this would be the turn that you go Headquarters, Iono, like Counter Catcher play. And I think we'd be in a much better spot because they wouldn't have access to Pokestop, and they'd have to find their own Stadium to attack. So it's kind of unfortunate that I did end up hitting that off of the Pokestop when I used it, but who knows if I would have ever even gotten it anyway. I think his hand is a little bit awkward to win next turn. I kind of need a top deck of some sort, I think, because I need like either Candy or my own or Dusknoir or Ultra Ball or anything like that, and I can just grab, unless they do that. This makes it a lot more awkward. Now I need multiple pieces to hit the combo, but they do end up Ionoing me, which I'm not too sure about that. I don't think that that was really the way to go. And I top deck the Colress Tenacity, and this does give me game. I'm just trying to remember if everything that I need is in the deck or not. So I Heavy Ball to check the prizes. I can't remember if I Heavy Ball or Ultra Ball, or just end up playing the Colress. Yeah, Heavy Ball first. That makes most sense. And I see that no pieces are in the prizes, so now I can Colress for Grand Tree and Pidgeot for Counter Catcher, and Grand Tree evolve to the Dusknoir, knock out the Raging Bolt. Well, first Counter Catcher, then knock out the Raging Bolt on the bench, and retreat into Charizard and knock out the active. that was kind of a bit of a convoluted game. This deck is like really kind of like confusing to play sometimes. I think it's a lot to do with it just like not having that high of a power level, and that combined with it being just a clunky stage 2 deck with really thin resources makes it so like if you pick just the wrong card off Greninja, you can lose the game for that, which is kind of unfortunate. It makes it not the most fun deck that I've ever played. It just doesn't feel that strong, and it's super clunky, and you can get just absolutely bodied by prizes sometimes just because everything is spread so thin. So my overall thoughts on this deck are, I don't think that this deck is even that good. I wouldn't bother putting any time with it. Maybe there's something here with the more general idea of Charizard and Dusknoir with another stage 2 as a supplementary attacker. I'm not too sure about that, but I know this deck did not feel good. There's so many better options in the format that feel like they're less fragile and have better matchup spreads. This deck is like Lost Zone, where you have to work super hard for your wins, but you don't get the reward of really playing a strong deck. You're like fighting against yourself with the way that the deck works, basically. Like the Raging Bolt game, I would have just lost if they could have taken 2 prizes on anything that turn, because I couldn't get the right cards going every turn. I was like trying to play catch up from not having the best hand turn 1. So maybe I should have been going second with this deck. That is definitely very possible. I didn't really try that because every game that I went first, it kind of felt like oh, it was working well enough. So maybe I should have tried going second, and maybe it feels better, because it does really feel like you want a big combo of like 1 or 2 attacks with the Greninja and then a Dusknoir and maybe second Greninja attack to take 4 prizes, or at least 3, and then like Briar, Charizard or something like that to finish off the game. But yeah, I don't know. I don't think that this is really a real deck. I just think Charizard is a really strong card, and sometimes you can be losing games and get a Charizard out and win the game just from 1 Charizard. Like against Miraidon, you can do that quite often. If you just you're down 4 prizes and get lone Charizard, just go Iono knockout, and after the second knockout they might not have energy left in play. Might be different with Magneton, but the idea is still there. So yeah, wouldn't bother really playing this deck. I'm not a big fan of it. Maybe I'm wrong. It definitely could be. That's very, very possible. So hope you enjoyed. Like or dislike, comment, and subscribe. Take care and have a good one.